Department, all housed in the Prime Minister's office, but this ministry seems to be cash-strapped. The Ugandan Constitution envisages that a contingency fund will be put in place, but since 1995, no such fund has been established, and yet the world over, such a fund will, with ring-fenced funds, provide the first line of response. When the Bududa landslide struck 2 years ago, government promised to put in place 10 billion shillings to buy land to relocate those in high-risk areas. The land has never been bought, and this move could have been frustrated by the residents themselves, who have refused to relocate. Experts have warned of more calamities, identifying other potentially risky areas around Mount Elgon, where, if no action is taken, disaster may well strike again. Today, the Uganda Red Cross launched a 4.5 billion shilling appeal to collect resources plus other items to help deal with the situation. So tonight, we reflect on the Bududa landslide disaster to try and understand why we are passive about disaster situations and what exactly needs to be done in terms of planning. Our guests tonight, Dr. Bildard Baguma, Under Secretary General in charge of programs and operations at the Uganda Red Cross. You're most welcome, Mr. Dr. Baguma.
Thank you very much. Good evening, listeners.
We're also joined by Mr. Godfrey Otobi, a disaster and relief management expert. Mr. Otobi, you're welcome.
Thank you, and welcome, listeners.
Dr. Baguma, can you give us a background to this? What exactly happened?
What exactly happened is that on Monday this week, at around 2 p.m., there was a landslide in Bududa district, as you have rightly said, and this landslide resulted in a number of houses being covered by the mud. Fortunately, as it were, it happened at around 2 p.m. when many people were out of their homes. Actually, it was also a market day, and many people were in the market and children were in the schools, but still a number of people must have been in their homes, and they were unfortunately buried by this mass soil movement. So that's basically what happened on Monday.
How many people have died?
You know, the only way you can ascertain and say that 2 people or 6 people have died is if you have actually recovered the bodies. There are efforts which are going on up to now to try to recover the bodies of people might have died, but none of the dead bodies has been retrieved. And therefore, you cannot say with certainty that so many people have died. What we know is that we have got a desk there which is registering from the survivors, and we have so far registered 18 people who are missing and therefore presumed dead.
18 missing. Somebody said there one person lost 15 relatives. Does 18 still sound plausible?
Well, for me it does, because it is based on information of survivors.
Right.
Yes.
So it's credible.
It's, in my view, still credible, but of course it's too early to say that's the only number.
Yeah.
But we can only talk about a number for which we have, for which we have some background too. We can't just speculate about numbers.
All right. Yeah. Mr. Otobi, could this have been avoided?
I think so, because experience, 2 years ago we had landslide in the same district, and by then I was out of the country, and I saw the whole president, the president of the country, visited the place personally. But there were also some signals that were sent earlier around the Mount Elgon area, other than the landslide. I think there were reported rift on the mountain side, which is still another disaster in the waiting. Now, from a disaster management perspective, I think that was enough signal. I think geologists had, at least there is speculation of a repeat of the disaster in Bududa. So this could have been avoided, at least the loss incurred in terms of human life and properties could have been avoided if people were removed or at least relocated from that place far away, so that at least in that situation I think it could have been avoided, the loss could have been avoided.
What causes landslides?
Well, landslide is caused by mass movement of soil, most cases due to heavy rain and also the texture of the soil. Around the Mount Elgon area is a volcanic soil, so it's
like ash.
Yes, so it doesn't have like rocks to hold it in firm place. So when it rains, I think the rain shocks in the soil, and because of also the hilly nature, it causes,
and rolls down.
and rolls down. So in the process of rolling,
it
becomes a big mass of soil, which is very difficult to imagine without seeing, and then it can bury a whole village, and can even bury in the case of Bududa, it can actually bury a whole village. That is how it happened. So people can really get so buried deep down that recovering every victim can be unthinkable. So what we need is probably another way of knowing how many people would have probably died because of that, was first of all to have a good register of the resident around this place. I think one other problem we have in this country is we don't have proper registration of citizens. Birth and death register, or at least some semblance of having register of resident, which is kept and updated. I think that is a bit of a laxity. So it's always very difficult to know exactly how many people have died. So in this case, we are still going to depend on speculation, because probably there are also visitors in that place other than the resident, or maybe some passers-by, which will be very difficult to account for them. In this situation is difficult, but that is how landslide is caused.
Very briefly, if you planted trees to carpet the area, would you prevent landslides?
I think not. It can reduce, but cannot really prevent. Cannot take it away.
Well, listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, the second Bududa disaster. There was one 2 years ago, 2010. The question is, have we taken any lessons to plan for future travels? Our guests tonight, Dr. Bildard Baguma, Under Secretary General in charge of programs and operations at the Uganda Red Cross Society, and Mr. Godfrey Otobi, a disaster and relief management expert. You will be able to call in later and contribute to this discussion, or even send a text message. What you do is type the word Spectrum, leave a space, type your question, message, or comment, and send it to 7197. That is Spectrum, message, question, or comment, send it to 7197. Dr. Baguma, what can we do for the future to avoid this kind of thing? A permanent solution, so to speak.
The permanent solution, in my view, would be actually to sort of zone areas where the landslides are likely to happen, and where the risk is so imminent, and therefore there's a certain danger to the people who live in those areas. These people should be moved from those areas. That is in effect the only permanent solution that is there to addressing this. However, there are also other things that could be done that could actually reduce the severity, or what we call reducing the disaster risk, really. I mean, in terms of how much information we can give to the communities, to have some sort of early warning, and also be able to act on that early warning. But of course, the really permanent solution would be to move people from areas where it is dangerous to live.
All right, of course, I would like you to talk to us about the broader, what National Policy for Disaster Preparedness and Management says. But I know it says somewhere that there must be gazetted places that are prone to disaster.
Yeah.
What does it say beyond that?
Beyond that, it says that people should be moved from these areas. It also says that the government should be able to relocate these people. And I mean, that's, I think, the situation that we should aspire towards. I know there may be a number of constraints, and I can't talk for the government, really, but that's what we should aspire towards.
Let's bring it a little bit. What other disasters could happen? We could have fire, we could have explosions, we could have explosive explosion, we could have an earthquake, we could have floods, we could have terrorism, we could have a hailstorm. Do we have preparedness for all these kind of things as a country?
We have some level of preparedness, but it's not adequate. In effect, a disaster is a cycle. it's actually a cycle. It starts somewhere and also ends somewhere. So there is a whole cycle there is of course first risk that is there, which if acted upon by some other force can actually result into a disaster that actually ends up killing people. And in all this, there are several steps upon which you can take action. If, for example, an area is prone to floods, maybe you can be able to put certain measures which can stop the water from getting to the people, or you can move the people from that side to either shelters where they can be able to survive the flooding. The same thing applies to if there are fires, then you should have preparedness to ensure that if the fire comes, then it does not affect the people negatively. Unfortunately, in this country, these measures are not adequate, both from an individual perspective, from a community perspective, but even on the overall, from the overall national perspective.
Mr. Otobi, what can we do to avoid these kind of things, not just this landslide?
Yeah, first of all, I think when it comes to disaster, I want to go back to the other point that we cannot put a permanent end to disaster.
But we can mitigate.
Disaster, yes, we can mitigate. A lot can be done. Actually, by the way, in Uganda, it is not just this landslide alone. I think we are prone, or we can call it, we are vulnerable to various types of disasters. Even here in Kampala, if like the kind of fire that happened in London those years back, I think this town will go into ashes. But let's go back to Bududa. I think prevention can actually happen. I believe technology is one thing that is has really done wonders in this world. I agree with Dr. Baguma. One thing we can actually do is to relocate people as an intermediate measure. But I think a lot can still be done. If we invest in research, can we do something extra? I don't have a suggestion, but I believe with the science and innovation, it is possible to do things. Because if in other places, out of studies and research, they were able to put dikes and other things to mitigate risk associated to tsunami and water-related disaster, it should be possible. In other countries, especially in the West, because of being prone to these natural disasters, they have even like the building codes have been put in place to mitigate. And this is a thing that we don't have. There is nothing like a building code. I don't think that is nationally accepted. If you have your land, you have your money.
Here we do French cut. Everybody will build this one.
Yes.
French cut.
Exactly.
And all about is a build French cut.
Exactly. No, actually, there's this story of a man who had money and just went to some craft, not even an engineer. Let's not talk about an engineer. Somebody knows as a builder, and he say, I want to build my house like that one there. And then he was showing with his feet that do it like this, it goes like this, and it goes like that, and it comes like this. Now that means, in fact, what I want to say is, you can build your house as and how you fit without caring whether there is a road. This situation is here with us. Now, in terms of prevention, I want to concur with my colleague that one of the things we can do is to temporarily remove people from that place. I heard the minister says it should be voluntary. I think in the interest of the life of the people, they may not appreciate the magnitude and what it means, but the government has a constitutional obligation to protect. Okay, so I think they need to do more than saying people should willingly relocate. That is not possible, because there's an attachment that we all have to our places, and we tend to stick in there. If it means and it is imminent, there is risk to the people, I think the government should take all the necessary means
All right.
Even if it means forcing people for their own sake, it is important to do that.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a moment. You spoke about construction. There's another man. It was in the newspapers. I think it was a line drawing, so-called cartoons. A man was supervising his house. I want this house finished in 24 hours. The man said, no problem. The first floor is already done. Now we're going to dig the foundation. That seems to be the way we build. Dr. Baguma, let's talk about this relocation. How are the people in Chiriandongo, survivors of the first Bududa landslide? They were located in Chiriandongo. How are they doing?
I may not be able to give you a very accurate and recent assessment of how they are. As far as I know, they were relocated. Land was allocated to them. We worked with the Office of the Prime Minister in the relocation process, but that's as far as our involvement went. And I don't have really very accurate and recent knowledge of how they are doing right now. No.
All right, let's try to paint a picture. They were given 2.5 acres each. They were given building materials, seeds to plant, some relief food to start them off. That's enough for someone to kick off a new life, isn't it?
No, it's not. Basically, there are several other things that need to be done, and one of them is about public goods. Because if you move a big population of people to an area, then there must be a provision for public goods. Are their children able to go to school? Do they have, the basic amenities that are necessary for life? Do they have sources of safe water? So, to locate people, it's more than just giving them land and maybe building material. No. And maybe, as you say, it's important, of course, to give them sources of livelihood, maybe seeds to start agriculture and these things. But it's also very important that public goods are also provided to them.
So you need to move them to a town?
Sorry? Not to a town, no, not at all. It means you move them to a place and take public goods there.
Build schools?
If they are not there, yes.
That's a huge cost.
It is a huge cost, of course. Moving people is a huge cost, not a small cost. It's very huge. But, I mean, if that's what it takes to save the human lives, then we should invest in it.
Mr. Otobi, somebody mentioned the figure 400,000 people that need to be relocated from the West, from the East, the Bududa area. Is that something that's feasible? Can the government hold out, hold it in its chest?
I think, first of all, 400,000 people is a lot of lives and is a big resource for the country. And I think it is feasible to do it. We still have land in this country where we can accommodate more people. And if the government even appeal to the other Uganda, I think people are willing to accommodate these people. But looking at the sheer number of people, I don't think there is an option to this. 400 people, 400,000 people. This is a huge population, and I would feel for them like anybody else, like my own. And if a government that cares for the people, I think we cannot sacrifice 400,000 people. We need to do something about them. Relocation, we may not need to do in the same place, but I think the government need to identify land around the country where people can be accommodated. I think that provision and the possibility is possible to do. We need some action.
All right. We have some precedents of where people have been relocated. I know there are places. I've been to places in Chiboga which has people from all different parts of the country. Places in Bulgaria, I've not been there, but I'm told it's a melting pot. People from different backgrounds. Do we have a clear precedent where people are moved from one culture to another?
Well, I'm not a very good historian when it comes to that. And maybe if my colleague Dr. Baguma is more familiar with that, it's okay. The most recent I know is relocation of people from Bududa to Chiriandongo.
Yes.
But then, we're human beings. We have refugees that have been moving from totally different cultures, going to different places. We have seen people moving actually even to other continents, a completely different culture.
Go to the US.
Yes, Australia, and all these other countries. People have been, now like Sudanese, and I think Sudanese, they're in this camp in Kenya. The Bab, yes.
That the Bab camp, the largest.
Yes.
In the West.
So, if there are these situations that has actually forced people to move to completely different cultures. I think it is precedented, but maybe not in this country. But I've already told the example of 2 years ago when they moved people from Bududa to Kirandongo. So I think it is precedented.
Well, one hopes there won't be politics. Obviously, the 400,000 people would need to move with their member of parliament. That's what I think. I could be wrong. Dr. Baguma, why don't people want to live?
I'm not sure really, but some of the sentiments you hear is that people believe that their land is very fertile and they don't want to leave their fertile land and go to another place which they don't know. But generally human beings, have fear of the unknown. I think for me that's the biggest factor.
Some don't even want to go to heaven.
Yes, fear of the unknown, but you are not so sure, so I think that's the biggest problem really. Yeah. But I think in the interest of people's lives, we really don't have an option.
Well, fear of the unknown. Somebody said, a rich man in this town, he says, everybody agrees heaven is a good place, but no one wants to really go there. That's Gordon Wavamuna, he says it in his book. But let's talk about human rights. Michael Nataka, the executive director of the Red Cross, spoke about that. Secretary General of the Red Cross spoke about that. Maybe we'll go for the break and then talk about that when we come back. Do stay tuned to Spectrum.
When Junior lost his appetite, his mother tried all methods to get him to eat. She tried scary stories.
Eat, Tommy, eat, or the big black elephant will come and eat all your food.
She tried magic.
Tommy, if you eat your food, I will turn this handkerchief into sweets. Look, bumble, bumble, boom, boom.
Then she discovered Apetol multivitamin syrup with lysine.
Mommy, I finished all the food. I am number 1.
Apetol multivitamin with lysine is helping mothers to turn mealtime frustration to a fun moment. Apetol has a great taste and contains lysine, which quickly improves your child's appetite and supports healthy growth. Apetol, health for life.
Remember me because I tried.
Remember me, not for the moves I pulled.
All the goals I scored. My dribbling, my passes on target.
My footwork, my tough defense.
Don't remember me for the score. For whether I won or lost. Remember me because I played. Because I laced up my boots.
And I stepped onto the pitch.
Remember me because I listened to the voice inside. And with everything in me,
I played.
As the Airtel Rising Stars tournament heats up, we are giving you the chance of a lifetime. Send ARS to 6333 and stand a chance to win a fully paid trip for 2 to the UK to watch a Premier League match. That's not all. You can win 1 million shillings, soccer balls daily, and 2.5 million shillings or a jersey of your favorite team every week. SMS ARS to 6333 and win with the Airtel Rising Stars.
Airtel.
John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special.
You've earned it. Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight, the second Bududa Disaster. Have we learned any lessons to plan so we can plan for the future travels? Our guests tonight, Dr. Bildard Baguma, Under Secretary General Programs and Operations of Uganda Red Cross Society, and Mr. Godfrey Otobi, a disaster and relief management expert. You will be able to contribute to this discussion by calling in or sending a text message to Spectrum, message, question or comment. Send it to 7197. Dr. Baguma, the Secretary General of the Uganda Red Cross Society, Mr. Michael Nataka, was saying people should really be moved without waiting for them to understand why they are being moved.
I mean, I think I agree with him, although I think it can be done both ways. I think we can explain to people why they have to be moved, but at the same time, also actually move them whether they really want or not. Because if something is dangerous to somebody's life, I don't think we need to wait for them to agree that yes, we have decided to go, or no, we have decided not to go. Because somebody might not actually appreciate the level of danger they are in. I'm sure if these people in these villages had appreciated the level of danger, maybe they wouldn't have been there. So I think it's a two-way thing. We have, yes, to explain to them why they have to be moved, but I think once we have prepared and are able to move them, we don't have, I think, to seek, to beg and say everybody must first consent or something. That's my view, personal view, really.
So it can be treated like an evacuation?
Yes, I think so.
You get them out of trouble, explain later.
Yeah.
Do we have a fund to do this?
I don't know. This is the role of government. Maybe one of these days when you have somebody from government, they can explain that. But I think if it is necessary, then we first have to decide that it is necessary. Then we prepare for it. I also don't think it's something that has to be done, en masse. Because the level of risk that is faced by different areas and different people is not the same. So we can do it in a phased manner such that a number of people are moved at a certain time as resources do allow. But then there is a systematic process of doing this.
So it can be done in phases. Some places have higher level of risk than others.
Yes.
Do we know exactly how many people are at risk, different levels of risk are countrywide?
Countrywide, I don't think we have a full figure countrywide. Indeed, the minister the other day mentioned, particularly for the Mbare region or sub-region there, an approximate number of 400,000 people. These people are all at risk, but the level varies. And if you consider other areas, we have had landslides in Bundibujo, we have had similar occurrences in some parts of Kabare, some parts of Kasese. So, we need to also, in addition, do a comprehensive assessment that covers all these areas that are at risk. But really, we don't have a specific number as of now.
Mr. Otobi, can you give us some dynamics of this kind of relocation? How would it be done?
Edmond, I think relocation, first of all, people need to understand that it is in the best interest of saving their lives. People need to be convinced that is a good thing to do. They need to know the magnitude of the imminent danger they are actually in. So outreach would be an important thing, and it needs to be planned because, I think from a technical point of view, it was clear that there is going to be a repeat. We had 2 years down the road. I think we could have done a lot if we were really committed to doing this, to make sure that we prepare people. And like Dr. Baguma has said, I think it needs to be phased, because we can establish with the accuracy which place is more vulnerable than the other. But I also know in this country, most of the argument in Bududa has been that there is an interest to grab land or remove people from their land, the issue of safeguarding land. And also we need to deal with that. We need to instill confidence in people. Now the other thing, when we do outreach, we need to plan where relocation can happen. The government knows exactly which part of the country and where they can get this land. Okay, so we have time to plan this kind of thing. The good thing with natural disaster is you can actually estimate or be a bit certain of the cycle, because for landslide, it happens during the rainy season. Okay, so you have some period to actually, we even determine that maybe in a period of 6 months or so, you can determine even the trend of the rain that is going to be pouring in a certain part of the country. We have this kind of technical idea of what happens. So we need to identify this land. We need to reach out to the people and let them know, and be convinced is a good thing to do. And then mobilization of resources. We need to mobilize resources for the relocation. And I think this government has goodwill from development partners. Really. At least I know Uganda, if compared to other countries, still have the goodwill of many of the development partners and donors. But even our own resources, because really we don't need, if your house is on fire, you don't need to run to other people without you trying to attempt to put out the fire. You should be the first responder. So I think the government should be the first responder. Put your money on the table and say, by the way, this is what I have, but this is how much I need to be able to do that. So fundraising would be something important. And then something that Dr. Baguma underscored earlier, the amenities needs to be in place. I worked in northern Uganda. I come from the north, and when people were returning back home, you know, people were returning and there were no services, and that one alone impacted on how people were moving. People had to sacrifice children and leave them in the camp because the facilities were better in the camps. You go to the countryside, there are no schools, there are no teachers, there is no health facility. So they left the children on their own peril. Now, we already know, if we identify these places, we need to put in place those facilities. Okay, I think facilities in these cases where we can predict needs to lead and people follow, and that will be what they call a pull factor for people to move in there, because there are a lot of uncertainty. People do not know. They need to be convinced that there are services, even the land that they are scared about of losing, that at least you can have some land where your livelihood can actually continue. So people need to be convinced that services are there. There's also attachment. I know there's this element of attachment to a place you grew up in. But sometimes we need to make this kind of sacrifices. But I want to say preparation is the fundamental bit of it, and maybe later we can talk about issues of disaster risk reduction, because it is under that bigger parameter of disaster risk reduction where we need, first of all, to plan, try to avoid it happening in the first place, right. And then the mitigation can take place when the actual disaster happens. But I think the first and the most important thing is to reduce reduce the risk of disaster. And for this natural disaster, as I've already explained, it is seasonal. And actually, according to the National Action Plan, there's already mapping of trends of disaster that are likely to happen. Like in the east, flooding. We had in 2007 in around the eastern side in Teso area, especially, it happened. What have we learned from that, and what have we done since then? Are we waiting for another flood to happen? Now in the west, there's also, I think it is also mapped for also flooding, and then in the north and northeast, extended dry spell. Okay, these are already information that we already know. We need to do something about them. We already know. Okay, if in the case of flood, what mechanism do we need to put in place? I think there are experts who are capable of doing that.
Right.
Yes.
Dr. Baguma, why is this happening now? These people could potentially have been their ages. Why is it happening now? Are we encroaching on places we're not supposed to be living in?
I think there are a number of factors. First of all, as Mr. Otobi rightly said, the nature of the soils in that area are sort of like volcanic soils. They don't sort of stick together. There are no rocks in which they are firmly held. Secondly, over the years, the population, of course, has not remained constant. The population has been increasing. Indeed, this issue of landslides, maybe if you come to this, it's broader than just the issues that we are talking about now. Because look at the issues of population explosion. It's one of the reasons why people have moved from the relatively safer areas where they have lived for many years into increasingly going into the mountainous and more dangerous areas. This population explosion, of course, has also caused the environmental degradation that goes with it, because people live there, they must eat, they must cook, they must use fuel. So these things also as well degrade remove all the forest cover. As such, the risk increases. But there is already an inherent risk in the area, because not every place can actually have a landslide.
So it's possible they went to farm in places that were not supposed to farm.
Yes, that's certainly one of the reasons, because they have started farming and using rudimentary methods of farming into the slopes of the mountains, and of course in the process they have removed all the trees that were there. So all this certainly contributes to the landslides.
Okay, Uganda Red Cross is trying to raise some money, 4.5 billion shillings. How are you faring on that?
Well, today we launched an appeal for 4.5 billion shillings, meant to support the emergency phase as well as the medium-term phase of supporting people that are affected by these landslides. We are looking at supporting, for now the estimate we are using is 100,000 people. And we are of course building on the government appeal, which as you must know was for 400,000 people that need to be relocated.
Yes.
And so our view is that one would try to support these people whether they are relocated from the current area or not. Because remember, even if people go and live with their relatives, these are already people who are poor, they are stressed, and therefore both the people who have moved as well as the host family need to be supported in order to not continue living a fairly normal life. So this appeal is meant to do that, but at the same time, should then people be relocated, as we think will happen, I don't know when, then we are also able to support that process.
What is the response so far?
The response so far is that
you launched it today.
We launched it today, yes, but we have received so far from MTN Uganda through the MTN Foundation. They have already donated 50 million shillings. That is what we have received so far. But we believe that all people and corporates of goodwill will contribute generously towards this appeal.
How was the last campaign? 2 years ago you launched another appeal, which I think DFID gave you £1 million or dollars.
Yes. They gave us actually £500,000, and that appeal was for about 4-point-something billion shillings, and we raised up to 75% of that amount.
That was a large success.
Yes, it was.
So this money is basically to temporarily remove them. It can't cover 100,000 people. That's a large number.
It can only cover the basic needs, because we have, as you must know, if you look at the disaster management policy and you look at the mandate of Uganda Red Cross Society, there are those areas where we are able to support and those where we are not.
Right.
For example, while we always support people with essential household items, we are not involved in food, for example. While today we provide a medium through which the Office of the Prime Minister and others can actually distribute food to people, we are not a food aid agency, and therefore we don't usually get involved in food aid. So this is just a smaller part, as you will realize. The government, it's about 1/10 maybe of the total budget the government is talking about. But again, for us as Uganda Red Cross Society, we also want to offer a medium. We want to offer a medium through which people can actually be able to support those in need.
Right.
And then our structure can be able to deliver this aid to the people who need it.
But how much has the government given you?
Now?
Well, they have a contingency fund according to the Constitution.
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether that contingency fund is available now, but so we haven't received
anything from the government.
Apart from, we did receive 100 bags of posho and 100 bags of beans. We distributed this to 112 survivors yesterday.
Right.
So the 112 survivors were already distributed from the Office of the Prime Minister, posho and beans for their immediate needs, and from the Uganda Red Cross Society stocks we have distributed non-food items. Those are essential household items, blankets, cooking pots and things like that.
And where do these people take the money? The ones that want to donate, they call you up?
Yes.
Do you have a bank account or what?
Unfortunately, I didn't come with a bank account now, but we have a bank account which this money can be banked, and if they get in touch with us, we'll be able to reach them. Yes.
You can't get lost looking for the Red Cross. Well, listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight, the second Bududa disaster. Have we taken any lessons to plan for future travels? You can call in now. Our numbers 0414-348-111, 0312-261-390, 0312-260-390. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you are calling from. Spectrum, hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir, your name?
I think the
Spectrum, hello? Hello, when you call in, please tell us your name and where you're calling from. The number 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390. Spectrum, hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir, your name?
My name is Ankarona Dapote, calling from Florida.
Alright, interesting offers there. Is that something that you would take up, Mr. Otobi? Buying land in the open market?
Well, I think the constitution is clear that land belongs to the people. So if there's just offers available and it's really good on the market, if the government is convinced it's a good thing to do, they should do it. But I think also we have seen trend where most of the government lands are actually being sold. I think now we need to reinvest in securing land for future use. This 10 acres is very small. Actually, the government needs much more than that. So maybe the one other thing that the government needs to start thinking about is actually even securing land, because disasters, at least with the climate change dynamics happening, we are going to be seeing many more disasters. So actually around, maybe the other thing we can do is around disaster risk areas, like around Mount Elgon. If people are too afraid of moving very far away, the government should identify at least some public land where it is vested in public interest for just kind of situation. So I think 10 acres is very small considering the number of people. But if there are just offers available, I think it is up to the government. I can't really commit on behalf of the government. But I think since land belongs to people, if the government doesn't have land, they have to buy it.
And the government should buy it for them?
You should buy and invest for public good in many countries.
Okay, Spectrum, hello?
Yes, my name is Godfrey.
Yes, Godfrey.
Now,
Alright. Dr. Baguma, is that something, do we know whether government can do that, move them to a place nearby?
I don't know that the government can do it, but I doubt very highly that they can do it. Because remember, the Bugisu region is a very densely populated area.
Okay, we have another call. Let's take our final caller for tonight. Yes, madam, your name?
Yes, I want to react to the caller who just called. What is the importance of
All right, Dr. Baguma.
Well, as I was saying, I think generally this Bugisu area is a very densely populated area. For those who know the place, you know how densely populated it is. I would therefore doubt highly that even if the funds were available, you can be able to get the land to resettle all these people in that area. But I think we must realize that lives are so much more important, and since I'm from the Red Cross, there is what we call the humanitarian imperative. It simply means that the first thing we must do is to save lives, protect people's lives, and should also start from the individual themselves. Because yes, there are all these sentiments, but preserving life should be the first consideration, and then other considerations can happen later. That's what I can say.
Mr. Otobi,
Yes.
cultures, how do we overcome that barrier? The lady says you should forget about it. Move to Chiyandongo if it gives you safety and a chance to start a new livelihood.
One thing I think we need to recognize these realities, because for the caller herself, I think there's a way you get attached to a place. We need to recognize that as a reality.
But it could be really great.
It's true, and I would say if there is a possibility of securing land, okay, possibility of securing land nearby around the Bugisu area, it would be probably the first option.
But maybe they'll go back to the ancestral land.
But you see, the government needs to enforce. If you put in a place, if you put a policy in place, you need to enforce it. So we need to find a way of stopping people from going there. But just like Dr. Baguma said, if it is a densely populated area, we need to move elsewhere. This is Uganda. We are not taking people out of this country.
Not to Congo.
Not to Congo. We have Congolese coming here and they're living in the camps here.
To America. They're not taking them to California.
Exactly. So I think this is still Uganda. We share a lot of common heritage. If Kirandongo is the last option, let's do it. But at least we need to, like he said, humanitarian imperative. Saving lives come first. The rest, whether it's a tribal thing and the other, come later. But first of all, let's save lives.
So I think the government should exercise some force.
I think if it is necessary and in the interest of public good, it should be necessary to use force.
Dr. Baguma, how would they do it? If the government decided right now as we speak to use force, how would they do it? Pass a decree or what?
I don't think I can comment on that. I don't know. I really don't know how they would do it, but I think the government has powers to actually coerce people to do what is absolutely necessary. That's what I can say. The how, I'm not so sure.
And how's the rescue effort now? As we speak this evening, how have they recovered any bodies? We heard that the soil is about 10 meters deep, which is difficult if you're using a handheld hoe.
It is very difficult because what is being used are basically rudimentary tools. And up to now, none of the bodies has been retrieved. Because imagine the mass of land and the depth if houses can be buried. So imagine a human being, I'm sure those human beings are there so deep that I'm not so sure they will be reached with the tools that are being used.
If you talk about house, that's about 4 meters, maybe less.
Yeah, slightly more, I think. Most houses are more than 4 meters.
4 meters high.
5, 6.
Yeah. 5, 6 meters. And you talk about maybe 10 meters, and yes. A handheld will do maybe 2 meters. Yeah. At best.
Yeah.
And it's a wide area.
It's a wide area, actually about the last estimate I saw was about 200 meters by 200. That's quite a big area.
Yeah. That's quite.
So handhelds won't do it. Why can't we get bulldozers, they are caterpillars?
I don't know. I last heard from the office of the Prime Minister that efforts were being made to take excavators to the area. As the information I had this evening, they had not reached there.
Can they actually access the place? Do we have bridges and the terrain to take them there?
They can be able to reach there.
All right.
Yeah.
Maybe they're being held somewhere. Some papers have been signed. We really don't know. But the Prime Minister has promised they will get. They will have to end here. Our time is up. Thank you very much, dear guests. Dr. Bildard Baguma, Under Secretary General in charge of programs and operations at the Uganda Red Cross, and Mr. Godfrey Otobi, a disaster and relief management expert. Thank you very much for coming to Spectrum tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, listeners.
Thank you very much for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond Kizito. Spectrum will be back tomorrow. Up next is the news in English.